This panel will look at how the election might impact policies coming out of Washington, particularly in AI regulation and labor. I'm thrilled to introduce right now Matthew Kaminsky from Politico. He's the founder of Politico Europe, former editor-in-chief of Politico. He'll be joined by Congressman Ro Khanna, represents Silicon Valley, and Congresswoman Kat Cammack, who serves on the Speaker's AI Task Force. So with that, over to you, Matthew.
Thanks so much, Nick, and good afternoon or good morning to those of you who are in different time zones. It is maybe not fitting that I am coming to you live from the analog capital of the country and arguably the world to talk about the future of technology, but obviously the future of policymaking as it regards technology. And it is dizzying to sort of how often you're seeing, latest updates to AI models. There are use cases coming out every single day. Policymaking, let's say, moves a little bit more slowly, but that's what we want to discuss today. And I maybe want to start with Congresswoman Cammack. The Republican Party is obviously known over decades as being skeptical about government regulation, especially government regulation of sort of business. But I do wonder how you think Congress and the federal government should be thinking and what it should be doing in regard to AI, and especially as it comes to protecting workers or thinking about the labor market going forward, which is going to be the main subject of our conversation today.
Oh my gosh, Matthew, we only have like 45 minutes, so you're kind of killing me here. So you're right in that Republicans have traditionally been more on the side of industry-driven solutions rather than government coming in with a big, overreaching, over-regulating hand. And as someone who is the flagship author and sponsor of the REINS Act, which is the largest regulatory reform bill in American history, which for all of our viewers and folks participating today, what the bill would do is it would require that any rule or regulation that has $100 million or more of industry impact would come back to Congress for an up or down vote, because you can hire and fire your Congress critter, but it is very difficult to hire and fire a unelected, nameless, faceless bureaucrat that dwells somewhere in a basement in Washington. So it's really reasserting that Article 1 authority. That is important because what we have seen is a really aggressive administrative state. And as AI technology has really become a part of so many different sectors and continues to have a really important role moving forward, you get very nervous about the big players in the space coming in with a set of regulatory recommendations, which ultimately would hamper innovation and push out smaller players in the space. So from my standpoint, I take the view of we should focus on the foundational elements, the language models, using blockchain as a solution for credentialing and Providence credentialing. I think that there are some really easy things that we can do in this space that allow for companies who are engaging in this space to continue to innovate and grow and really push boundaries. But if we can get back to a place where we're putting data and privacy as really the cornerstone of what government is working on and focusing on, and leave the rest out, I think that's a good place for us to start. No doubt there needs to be some sort of chalked field, for lack of a better way to say it. But I think us coming in and over-regulating in the space was really going to be to our detriment, and certainly to the detriment of industry.
Do you think the presidential executive order last year went too far? And if Donald Trump becomes president again, what should he undo? The whole thing or just parts of it?
I tend to believe that a lot of these EOs come as a knee-jerk reaction of something's happening, we have to do something just to say we did something. And certainly, like I said, there's you look at this election and there's discussion of, is the FCC or the FEC supposed to be covering AI generated content in electioneering communications? There's all kinds of things that sure we need to work out, but what it did was it really sent a message, shot across the bow in industry of, ooh, okay, maybe we need to be at the table, which of course everyone should always have a role to play in coming to Washington and really educating members of Congress, because I know, and Matthew, and I'm sure Ro can speak to this, members get elected and all of a sudden they think that they're engineers, constitutional lawyers, MDs, and, you know, experts in all things. We need industry experts to come and really work with us as we craft this. But the key here is that it has to be industry driven. And what the EO was a government response to a lot of doomsdayers in the space. And I am not someone who believes that AI is the doomsday scenario, right? I think that we're going to have tremendous benefits from AI being utilized in all sorts of industries. So the EO, it had elements that were okay, but I think the genesis really was a reactionary, oh, we have to do something so we can say we're doing something, rather than it being a thoughtful, common sense, industry driven approach.
Congressman Khanna, maybe I want to sort of push further on the idea of what policymakers should be doing about AI and what is the main concern they should have around AI. I will neither confirm nor deny that I may have used ChatGPT to help me with the questions, which may lead to the displacement of future panel moderators, certainly panel prep people. But I know you've been sort of thinking a lot about this, including, what should policymakers be doing? Should we have a robot tax, for example, to incentivize labor over capital? Walk us through this.
Well, Matthew, thank you for moderating this. It's great to be on with Representative Kamak. We've gone on Codels together and have a great working relationship. I would say that the biggest challenge, actually just returning from the Middle East, and when I said I was representing Silicon Valley, everyone from the Prime Minister of Israel to the King of Jordan to the Saudi Arabian leaders, their eyes lit up. And the reality is that my district in Silicon Valley, we have $10 trillion of market value. We're going to have probably another 10 to 20 trillion dollars of value generated in AI. I'm very, very optimistic about the future of economic innovation. But the question is that economic gain going to be concentrated in places like Silicon Valley, or are ordinary Americans going to benefit from it? And a lot of policy decisions will go into that. Are we going to use AI in ways that enhance, Matthew, your capability and productivity, so that now that you could be a better moderator because you can quickly look at some things on ChatGPT? Or are we going to just eliminate your role? And in making these decisions, Darren Akilamagu, who won the Nobel Prize this year in economics, has a great piece about what is excessive automation. I'll give you a classic example of excessive automation. When I call to get help for returning something or the customer service, I struggle with my phone to get a human voice. I don't know about people here, but I press star, I press whatever to get me a human person. I don't want to talk to just an automated chatbot. And so in my view, what we have to do is center workers in the conversation about how we use AI to enhance their jobs so that they can think about what those jobs look like, as opposed to just rushing to adopt AI for excessive automation. And the tax code has implications there. We privilege capital expenditure and depreciation, and we don't have the same tax credits for investing in worker training and in worker enhancement. So to me, that is the biggest challenge for AI is, does it further our economic disparity and the disparity between parts of this country that have been deindustrialized and left out of modern prosperity and places like Silicon Valley?
So can the congressman from Silicon Valley be in favor of a robot tax?
I think a robot tax is on the table, but I think the bigger issue is not whether we have a robot tax, but whether we have a better distribution between the taxation on capital and the taxation on labor. And right now, what you have is companies can deduct for capital expenditure, but they don't have the same ability to get tax credits for hiring people or investing in people. And what I rather see is that we level that and give companies tax credits for investment in people and hiring people.
Congresswoman, could the party of Donald Trump, which is now more and more rhetorically the party of the working man, appealing to people without college degrees, could it get behind something like Congressman Khanna just laid out?
I doubt that you'll find that Republicans will be in favor of any additional taxes. It
But
seems
shifting the tax code. So it's nothing, just to be fair to his
certainly,
point. Yeah.
and you've seen President Trump has announced that he wants to incentivize manufacturing here in the United States, lowering the corporate tax rate to 15% for people that manufacture and do a Made in America operation. And of course, we know that in this race, and we're at the height of it, you have one side that wants to not only increase the corporate tax rate, but then wants to see an increase in capital gains and even a tax on unrealized gains, which would have exceptionally detrimental effects. When you are in an innovative space, we want to see more invested in R&D. We want people to grow and create these jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. It's our entrepreneurs. It's our folks from Silicon Valley all the way down to, Miami Beach and everywhere in between that are creating these jobs. So we need to be facilitators rather than debilitators of this. And I just think it's something that if we were to start actually forming a tax code that was based off of true incentives for growth and from that mindset, rather than punishing and de-incentivizing companies and people from excelling, we would have much better results. I mean, currently Republicans have been pushing to not only lock in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from Donald Trump's time in office so that our employers have that long-term certainty, but we also wanted to make R&D tax deductible. It's absolutely absurd that you can write off all of your operations except for R&D. And at the end of the day, people come to the United States not because of our IQ. I mean, Ro and I can laugh about this. It's like we know who we work with. People aren't coming for the IQ. They're coming for our CQ, our creative quotient. We are the problem solvers. We're the innovators. If we can tap into incentivizing and rewarding that CQ, and that's reflected in the tax code, then we're going to get that $20 trillion market that Ro is talking about in Silicon Valley. We're really in position that we can do this long term so that, one, you don't have the regulatory environment that shifts wildly from one administration to the next, but that people can do those long-term capital investments. And so I think the less that we tax, the better off we will be.
Let's try and reunify America here on this panel. Where do you two agree on policy solutions as it relates to AI?
Let me answer that. I do want to say where we part disagree on how to bring manufacturing back. I mean, we've tried the corporate tax cut approach, and the reality is, since the 1980s, with tax cuts and with deregulation, it led to the hollowing out of manufacturing and bad trade deals. And it led to the concentration of wealth in places like New York and Silicon Valley. The Silicon Valley companies benefited enormously from the tax cuts, but they didn't put the factories in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or in Ohio or Pennsylvania. I think when you look at why President Biden had twice the manufacturing investment, it's because we had direct funding for factory expansion, the same way that FDR, Hamilton, Lincoln built America. But let me place where we may agree. Now, I'm hopeful, of course, that Kamala Harris will be president, but if Trump becomes president, he has Elon Musk on his side. I know Elon very well. Elon and I did a chat on X with Mike Gallagher, who's no longer in Congress, but a Republican. And Elon proposed there and in other places having an AI regulatory commission, a federal agency on AI, to make sure that we had basic safety tests, to make sure that we had clear regulation in terms of something being AI or not, and a disclosure about that, to make sure that we don't have as many bots. So I would support an idea like that Elon has on AI.
Well, I know that this is supposed to be the unity part of the panel, but I'm gonna disagree very quickly with my friend Ro. We look at the CHIPS Act, and while in theory it was something that was going to be great and people are still working through their applications, I mean, Intel was one of the greatest beneficiaries of the CHIPS Act. We're talking billions of dollars, and they've laid off 1,300 people. So we're now staring at not just 1,300 workers that have been laid off by Intel, but then another 800 actually in Ro's district here in the very near future. So there needs to be a conversation about, one, repatriating dollars. And I think that that's one way that we can actually bring manufacturing back. Two, the tax environment, it has to be something that's favorable to industry and business. And three, we have to lock it in. No industry, and as someone who, again, I wasn't in the tech industry, but I came from a small family business, commercial sandblasting, the regulations killed us and the uncertainty of a tax environment killed us. You can't make substantial capital investments when the tax code and the regulatory environment is shifting every 4 years from one administration to the next. And that's why having Congress in the driver's seat through the Article 1 powers is so important. But I do think, and Ro and I think we share this, and Ro, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we all agree, regardless if you're an R or a D, that we have to have a national data privacy standard, because the piecemeal work that has been done state by state, it's just not sustainable. No company has the bandwidth to comply with 50 different states' data privacy regulations. And so that's something that we collectively, as Americans, we need to get that across the finish line in a way that is common sense, that puts people in charge of their privacy, that is favorable to industry, that people can say, you know what, we're gonna lock in on this. And that, I think, will also free up a lot of these companies that are trying to comply with, I think at this point we have 23 states that have different data privacy standards. So that's one thing that can be 1000% bipartisan and really an America First type policy.
Can you, either of you, is this question for whoever feels more confident addressing this, what do you see as the time frame where we're going to see, 2023 was the year of AI hype. This has been the year of a bit of AI, or the balloon sort of shriveled a little bit. People have moved on to try and figure out use cases, but it hasn't quite met the hype. When do you think AI will really show concrete impacts on our labor force, either how what people are doing, or how companies are sort of shifting resources? I'm kind of curious to see what perspectives you have.
I think AI is already having an extraordinary impact. I mean, it's having an extraordinary impact on our military. I'm on the Armed Services Ranking Member of the AI Innovation Technology Committee, and we need AI in so many of our drone technology, in our defenses, in our targeting, in our cyber defense. AI is having an impact on medicine already, in terms of doctors and nurses being able to use it. The person who won the Nobel Prize at Google had AI's use for helping discover new proteins. We're going to be having AI already helping in new educational platforms. Now, in terms of gross displacement of the labor force, I hope we don't have that, and policy will determine it. But remember, John Maynard Keynes in the 1930s wrote that we'd all be working a 15-hour work week because he thought automation would render work obsolete. And he turned out to be wrong, because he didn't anticipate that Elon Musk would be sending up rockets to space and then capturing them. So my view is that the production capability of America will expand dramatically, so that we don't have mass sort of displacement of workers. But what we need is to figure out how we make sure everyone is participating in this prosperity.
Is the universal basic income, is that still your preferred solution? Is that a sustainable one?
I've never, I mean, I'm for it in transitional periods, but I think this idea that Silicon Valley should build all this wealth and just mail every American a check is offensive to most Americans. Americans they're entrepreneurial, they want to produce things, they want to make things, they want to engage in prosperity. And what we have to figure out is, how do they build wealth themselves in a modern economy, not be on the dole of a couple of billionaires.
Congresswoman?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know what I'm going to say there, Matthew.
Not on UBI, but on this original question was, what is the sort of time horizon on how you think AI is going to impact? Let's think the kind of the labor market. And also, I do want to mention that you come from a district which is very different from Congressman Khanna's district, much more rural. Anyway, how is it going to impact there? When?
I agree with Ro in that AI is here, and it's here in a very meaningful way already. I represent the University of Florida, so go Gators. We have a huge initiative underway in which the university is hiring AI professionals to embed them through every single school. So from accounting and finance to the law school to, of course, medicine, we're seeing where, in radiology, for example, you have AI models that are being trained on the latest scientific journals and then reading the results before the doctor has eyes on it, and it can actually find things that maybe the doctors have missed. So there's going to be really a substantial amount of incredible outcomes, both positive, I think net positive, in the sense that we'll have cures for cancer faster. We will have incredible developments as a result of our using AI. I was just in San Francisco and I was taking a Waymo everywhere, and it was fantastic. It was a better driver than some of the Uber drivers that I've had. And that was 3 days ago. I'm in a Waymo, a driverless vehicle through the streets of San Francisco, and it was amazing. And then I'm in Chicago and I'm talking to my Uber driver who's driving a Tesla, and he and I are talking about these Waymos and how these driverless cars, these autonomous vehicles are kind of taking over. And he said, you know what, this Uber thing hasn't been working out so great. And honestly, I was thinking about going back to school anyway. And he said, I think I'm going to go into engineering and maybe do some side work. And, he was talking about this, and it really made me think about going back to our tax code, how we need to incentivize, one, the gig economy, right? The tax code is getting more increasingly hostile to our 1099 employees, our independent contractors. We need to facilitate where these people who want to do side work and create businesses and do things and contract with companies, they should be able to do that. And we shouldn't penalize people for that. So in terms of the impact, it's going to have an incredible impact, but I think it's going to also open up several new industries that we aren't even talking about today. Sure. Maybe 10 years from now, there will be an entire new workforce that we haven't thought about is going to be required.
Yeah, that point about the gig economy is a very apt one. One last question, and I'm going to give you one word answer. We have an election in 2 weeks. We have not had the AI October surprise. How concerned are you on a DEFCON, I guess 5 being the green, 1 being the red, that we might get an AI election surprise in the next 2 weeks? Congresswoman, DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 5? Where do you fall?
Everyone was freaking out about the deep fakes. While AI is good, it's not that good. People can still pick up on it by and large. I don't think we're going to have that in the next 12 days. I'm feeling pretty confident.
Okay. Kind of same question to you. Also, how has AI changed politics, or the politics, or the campaign?
I'm not that concerned about a massive deepfake. I do think that you've had AI enable bots to proliferate more kind of propaganda, and a lot of the propaganda, or what either side labels misinformation, depending on the point of view, is done not by people. It's being done by bots, and reducing that, I think, is important. But I will say this: we often blame technology for, I think something that is much deeper, and that is that this country is deeply divided. We have lost the ability to talk to each other with respect, to listen to each other with civility. And yeah, I'm not saying that social media or AI hasn't made that worse in certain ways, and we need to solve that. But it's sort of blaming something that isn't the deeper problem. The deeper problem is we probably need more people learning kindness, respect, and from kindergarten to 6th grade, and civic education, more than thinking we're going to solve this by dealing with bots.
Okay, super. Well, I think we're over time. Thank you both so much for a great conversation. And Nick, I want to hand it back to you.
All right, what an incredible final panel. Thank you all for joining us. That was pretty incredible to see a esteemed Politico reporter have that powerhouse discussion on tech, labor, politics with 2 really influential members of Congress. So thank you all again for that. And I appreciated the comments from the Congresswoman about a national data privacy standard. I know practically every US company would agree with that. And Congressman Khanna did a really effective job of highlighting the benefits, how the workplace is already using AI, but also some of the risks or dangers, particularly here in the final weeks of the campaign.